Hello, my name is Don Schmidt, and I'm here with my co-host, Jenna Randar.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jenna. We are here to share our expert insights on outdoor recreation, and this time we're going to go outside of our normal Northern California focus.
We decided that since Father's Day is right around the corner, it'd be fun to look back at the parks and special places that our dads introduced to us when we were young.
Yeah, I think this will be a fun episode. A lot of people we worked with during our careers in parks said that one reason that they decided on becoming a park ranger or an interpreter, a maintenance worker, or a resource ecologist as a life choice was really because their family or their friends took them to parks when they were young. Now, these trips and places became embedded as a special lifetime memory for a lot of these people. For both Jenna and me, our dads were the ones who decided which places our families would experience that first smell of a pine forest or that breathtaking panorama of the high Sierra peaks in my case. And so we thought that we would honor our dads and all of those lifetime memories by talking about the special places that we got to experience and how they eventually directed us into an amazing career path working in parks.
All right, but before we jump to that fun part, let's start with Dawn's favorite fun part. But this time we've switched it up and I get to give the fun fact and Dawn gets to guess.
Yay.
So, Dawn, there's 280 California state parks, right? But
Officially now, as I just the
officially,
other day, there's 283.
so I thought it was high time for me to give you the fun fact. So can you tell me the new parks, the expanded park, and where they're located?
Yes. Well,
Triple threat.
yeah, we'll talk about the expansion since I was partially involved in one of those a long time ago.
Yep.
The Bear Yuba Land Trust has turned over about 217 acres or so of land around the west end of the Independence Trail, which is at South Yuba River State Park outside of Nevada City, where I worked, you worked.
Yep. I worked on that as well.
Yep, that's been in the works for I
A
think
long
at least
time.
13 years now. So I am really glad that that finally happened. I know also because I visited there once back in the early 1990s that there's a spot down in Bakersfield that celebrates the Dust Bowl era. But I'll let
Okay.
you tell me about the other one because I can't remember right off the top of my head.
Right. So let's start in the north and work our way down. There's the new Feather River Park outside of Olivehurst in Yuba County. So
Hmm.
that's just below the South Yuba River.
Hmm.
Traveling a little further south between Fresno and Millerton Lake will be the new San Joaquin River Parkway. And then lastly, which you just mentioned, was down in Kern County. State Parks is preserving the last remaining Dust Bowl camp that is located south of Bakersfield. So it's nice to hear that there'll be more public access to the Feather River and the San Joaquin rivers. So people will also be able to connect with Steinbeck's description of life in a Dust Bowl encampment, which is the only physical location remaining in California. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
But if you have a particular park or location or public land that you want us to feature or to learn more about, let us know on our social media or our email at roguerangerradio@gmail.com.
Yeah, absolutely. I will mention that that Dust Bowl encampment, I believe that Kern County has sort of been maintaining that piece of property, and it's a very small space. I think it's only 2 acres, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very small.
I didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And it's kind of southeast of Bakersfield, almost tucked up against the base of the Tehachapis down there.
okay.
So, if you're down the Bakersfield area, you definitely want to pull off of Highway 99 and drive out there a few miles and check it out. So, yeah. Anyway, we're into our storytelling time. And I'm just going to say this right off the bat that I was incredibly lucky growing up.
You don't say.
Yeah, amazingly lucky because I cannot think of a better place to have spent my youth than Yosemite National Park. The park was my home and my playground, and it obviously is amazingly special, especially considering the number of visitors that are heading that way these days on the weekends.
And just to interject, Dawn, for those listeners who are new to our podcast or for people that don't know you in real life, Dawn grew up in Yosemite, like physically in the park. That was his home. It's not like it was my home. I went there on the weekends to, I felt like no, you physically went to school there.
I did. I
So
was
I
I was
just want to
born
make
there.
that point.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
born in the what used to be called the Lewis Memorial Hospital. I think it's called the clinic now. But yep, I was born right there, and yeah, I was fortunate enough to have a good percentage of my youth there at the little Yosemite school. Yep, myself and
Crazy.
my brothers were there. But it was my dad who was the one who introduced our family to things like backpacking up to Merced Lake or camping up at Tuolumne Meadows. And we often went up to Saddlebag Lake just outside the park.
Hmm.
Back in the days of when the old Glacier Point Hotel existed, we would sometimes go up there on Sunday nights for spaghetti dinner.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he liked to hike through the Tuolumne Grove of the giant sequoias. The Mariposa
Okay.
Grove is the big one that everybody knows.
Yeah.
But if you are heading up toward Tioga Pass, you can turn off to the Tuolumne Grove, and it's beautiful. And then he was very much into skiing, and so we skied almost every weekend in the wintertime up at Badger Pass, the little ski resort there. So
Hmm.
and then in the summer, we would often drive over Tioga Pass and head to Levining for lunch or all the way out to Mono Lake and even out to Bodie to check out the historic park out there. He was very interested in doing a deep dive in everything that was in and around Yosemite. So, I was very lucky. But you grew up in Southern California
I
and you got to explore places and do things off-road that I never got to see, and I never got to do until I was an adult. You've been to places I've never been. So, which place is probably the most special or stands out the best, that your dad had introduced you to?
feel like that's a really hard question to answer, but also fairly easy. I had the complete opposite childhood of you. We did not hike. We did not backpack. We did not tent camp. We did not sleep on the ground if we had to. But like you said, we off-roaded. The background of my parents was they raced off-road
Mhm.
up until the point that I was born. So all throughout the 80s, they were racing off-road through the Mojave, all of that. So with that background, and my dad used to dual sport ride
Oh,
down through Baja.
yeah.
So he did sleep in a tent and he did sleep on the ground, but that
Okay.
was like the men's stuff. And we would take off-road trips down to Baja as well, but that's not where we're focused on today. We spent a lot of time as a family exploring Anza Borrego State Park,
Mhm.
Ocotillo Wells, which in my mind, they're kind of conjoined, but they're very different recreational uses. So for those of you that are listening, that may not be familiar, Ocotillo Wells is a vehicular rated park, whereas Anza Borrego is a normal state park, which just like you just go, it's not for off road use technically.
And the largest of the California state parks.
It is. So we spent a lot of time going around there. I learned to ride my ATV, my quad at Ocotillo Wells, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But I think the place that we spent the most time was actually Death Valley National Park and the BLM land surrounding uh, Death Valley.
Mhm.
Death Valley is expansive in its own right, and then you tack on that BLM checkerboard properties all around it, and it's just there's so much to see. And I think if it wasn't for my dad wanting to go just a little bit farther or go explore that mining town, that old mining camp, that valley with the petroglyphs in it, or all these things off the beaten path, I can definitely say that, you know, those cultural and natural places with significance wouldn't be as important to me today, which I think that speaks for a lot of us, like you were mentioning earlier. But Death Valley definitely holds a special place in my heart. The views are expansive. There's so much rich cultural history in the park. There's something for everyone, whatever you're into. Dark night skies, weird geological formations, California history, mining history. It's there. My dad has a weird penchant for finding old mining camps or wanting to
Mm.
explore old mining camps.
Yeah. That's kind of a big thing in the off-roading community.
I don't know why, it just is. There my dad's has atlas books, maps, like, all these field guides to find old mining camps across the Southwest and California, but I think the coolest one that my dad ever took us to this is gonna sound a little weird. There are a few mining camps in the BLM portion of Death Valley National Park, well, not on the outskirts of Death Valley, the Panamint Mountains, um, that were restored. I use that term loosely,
Yeah.
by a group of men who worked for Pac Bell.
Mhm.
They were all, like, not linemen, but what would be the word? You know the word.
Well, there was probably, there was an organization because my
Yeah,
dad had worked for Pacific Telephone, and that's why we were in Yosemite. But there's a group of not even retirees, some of them are still working.
yeah,
But, I can't remember what they called themselves right off the bat, but they did a lot of those kinds of projects in and
projects,
around,
okay.
California.
So, there's an old mining camp in the Panamint Mountains, Death Valley area called
Telephone pioneers. That's
Yes, thank you.
yeah.
But this particular one that we stayed at is called Briggs Camp,
Mhm.
and we'll put a note or a link or something at the end of this for those of you that wanna look it up. It's spelled Briggs. It's first come, first serve. You have to have an off-road vehicle to get there. You will not make it in a Prius. It's a very narrow box canyon. A Humvee will not make it either. Bring your own cooler, bring your own propane bottle, bring a change of clothes and a sleeping bag. It's a fully furnished cabin, and it is so cool in the middle of nowhere. If you can get there, there's a hot shower if you bring your propane bottle, and I believe there was a hot tub, if I remember correctly, and you just camp in the middle. You're all gonna be all by yourself, so if you want solitude, but it was probably the coolest experience as a little kid that my dad could take us on, like, that was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and of course, we went on Halloween weekend. I distinctly remember it being Halloween, and nothing is spookier than an old mining camp, a decrepit mining camp, mind you, to, like, a seven-year-old child. Yeah,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are a lot of mice. But yeah, I had the complete opposite childhood, but my dad took us everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere. So,
Yeah, and, we did travel a lot, but my dad, my mom, they always wrapped a backpacking trip into our vacations, but we also did a number of different backpacking trips within Yosemite National Park, which was kinda neat. We would hike, like I mentioned before, up to Merced Lake or up to
yeah.
Thing, to the High Sierra camps, which are pretty special places in and among themselves within Yosemite.
Yeah.
But my dad was very interested in traveling to national parks. And I think it was because not only of that Yosemite experience, but the fact that every single vacation we took every summer, and they were 2 to 3 week vacations, he would save up all his
Those
time.
are long.
Yeah. They were always wrapped around some sort of backpacking thing in a national park. And I think just being around that environment really was kind of the spark for me to want to become a park ranger down the road. I very much respected the work that they did, and I always loved watching what the rangers did. We traveled all around and backpacked at places like North Cascades, which didn't become a national park until 1969 or 1970. That place is incredible. It's like a miniature Banff.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. Like I said, he always tried to incorporate the backpacking into the vacation. We did have one kind of crazy trip into what is called the Hoh Rainforest, HOA.
Yeah,
It's on the western side of Olympic, so it's on the wet side.
okay.
There's a reason why they call it a rainforest. So we were going to hike from there
It's
to the
not a
top of Mount
misnomer.
Olympus and back. Didn't work out that way because it poured, I mean, buckets for 3 days from about 15 minutes after we put the packs on and started hiking, and my folks they finally gave
They
up.
called it.
It was an adventure that I'll never forget. But going to those national parks and seeing, at that time in the 1960s, national parks had adopted a program called Mission 66. So they were upgrading a lot of the facilities there. So a lot of the visitor centers were brand new. And I remember looking at all the brand new interpretive exhibits and watching the
That's
staff. And I was just really enamored with what they did and how they did it. And I know that that just absolutely stuck in my head from the time I was probably 6, 7 years old.
Okay. I think there's definitely a defining moment in that age range where if you're doing those things, they stick with you,
Mhm.
and it really defines who you're gonna be as an adult later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was about 5, my parents took a road trip up 395, and we hit all the spots, Mono Lake, June Lake Loop, Mammoth, not in that order, clearly. But one of the last places we stopped before heading to Tahoe was Bodie State Historic Park. I was totally smitten with it. I grew up watching Bonanza. That was like the TV show that was on,
Sure, me too.
you know? Yeah. Clearly, it was reruns for me.
Yeah.
And so, like, this was part of the vernacular that I grew up with was this Wild West, and I loved that park, and I thought it was so cool, and I could touch everything and not get in trouble for because it's an outdoor museum. You
Mhm.
can touch things, you can be alive with history, which was really, really cool for a 5-year-old, and it was hands-on, I was in hog heaven, and we took a group picture at the top of the street in the park, and 12 years later, the house that we're standing next to in that photo would become the dorm I would live in. I would work at Bodie State Historic Park 12 years later.
Yeah,
So, clearly, it had a huge impact on me because of my dad.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've always thought it was interesting that my parents really never visited many of the California state parks, which I thought was kind of funny, except up on the Redwood coast there. But we did go to a lot of the Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana state parks. I spent a good portion of my life up in and around Lake Tahoe, but I was never introduced to those parks until I introduced myself back in college.
Yeah. I did not go to Yosemite until I was 19,
Yeah.
and I was actually taken was, a park ranger took me.
Uh,
Obviously, ghost towns and mining camps became important to me because I ended up working at almost every mining related park in the California State Park system.
Isn't that
Literally every single one except for Coloma. Yeah. So yeah, I think we can both say that, if it weren't for our dads, which we've already mentioned this, but just to reiterate it again, like those experiences really hit home. You know this because I worked with you there, but for those of you that don't know me in real life, I ended up working for the off-highway vehicle division of state parks.
mhm.
State parks does have an off-highway division. There are how many off-highway parks, Don?
Well, 9.
9. That was my fun fact trick question for you.
Yeah.
There are 9 within the state park system. Dawn and I probably worked at all of them at some point between the 2 of us, and you can bet your bottom dollar that when I got hired on, I immediately called my dad and told him that I got hired on,
Yeah.
and I definitely called him when I got deployed to go on the Rubicon for work,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
and
as one does.
yeah, what an incredibly beautiful area up there too on the Rubicon Trail. For those of you who don't know, it runs from Loon Lake to Lake Tahoe, and it's managed by a number of different agencies, and it all seems to come together and allows off-road recreation use in a beautiful part of California. So,
Yeah, you can't beat it. That and Fordyce is phenomenal.
yeah.
And I think the secondary point that I want to drive home with this episode is that there's multiple ways for people to get out and recreate. It's not just hiking, birding, swimming, whatever. There's multiple ways for people to get out and recreate. And Don and I have vastly different experiences, but we still both love the outdoors and protecting it in the ways that we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too that for anybody that has any partial interest in working in the recreation side of things as a ranger, an interpreter, park maintenance, or, any of the different factions that you might find people working in parks. If you're at a park, a county park, a city park, and you see one of the workers there, don't hesitate to go talk to them and ask them about their jobs and what they
Yeah.
because it is a very interesting field to work in, and if you're the kind of person that likes to be outside, the opportunities are there all over, the state of California in a lot of different park districts, California state parks, national parks, Bureau of Land Management, but regional
Yeah.
parks and city parks,
County parks.
county parks, yeah. there's a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different types of jobs. And
Yeah.
we're always looking for really good people to be stewards of the public lands. So, if you have any kind of interest in doing that at all, don't hesitate to ask us. You can email us at any time.
And staff are always we're the staff and people that I know that I still talk to, old colleagues, they're always talking to people, "Send people my way, we'll do a ride along," or because interpreters, we do ride alongs too, it's not just law enforcement. And there's so many avenues of things that you can do within all these different agencies, and I know that this isn't California centric, but I wanna mention it anyways, is that Nevada is really up and coming with their state park program,
They are.
and
Mhm.
they're really expanding their system, and I believe there'll be more hiring opportunities. So if you can't find a spot or you don't want to find a spot in California and Nevada is your jam, then maybe look over there as well.
Yeah, I would
And
agree. And they have
I
very interesting parks in the Nevada State Park System.
cool. And I actually know quite a few people that have come from the California State Park system and have moved over there.
Mhm.
So,
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. And that is one thing to mention is that, if you're working in parks, you don't necessarily have to stay with one particular agency or whatnot. People bounce around quite frequently. So,
Yeah. I
you
mean, I think all of us bounce around from national to state and back and forth, and
yeah, it's not
yeah.
uncommon to be working with somebody who has in fact, you and I worked with somebody who had experience with, I think, Santa Clara County and Yosemite, and I
Mhm.
mean, the list kinda went on for all the different places that he worked. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and, those all have very interesting experiences. We talked to Katie last time from, East Bay
Mhm.
Regional
East
Park,
Bay.
and she had worked for state parks at one point. So, you know
And we know several people that have flip-flopped from there also. I mean, just that's the third point, I guess, of this episode is that there's a lot of opportunity out there for people who want to break into working for parks in whatever capacity or agency that they are. And how many times do you get pulled aside at a barbecue or some function and people find out that you were a park ranger Don or that you worked for parks in some way and they go, I always wanted to do that.
every time.
All the time.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
the time.
I know for you, I know for me that I probably wouldn't have been doing this if it really wasn't for my dad, and the influence that he had on me.
Yeah, I can confidently say the same. I would have become a high school art teacher.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, that's fine too, but, the path that I led was really interesting and fun, and it would not have been what it was if it weren't for my dad. Uh, so today, in honor of our fathers, we looked back at some of the amazing parks and places our dads thought we should know about and care about when
Mhm.
we were young and into our young adulthood, and the powerful effects that it had through us as adults and in our lives. So if you have any questions about any of the places we mentioned, feel free to contact us at our email, which is roguerangerradio@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to help you. And like Don said, and he always says in every episode, we will put links in the bottom or other information because some of the stuff we talked about is a little different
Yeah.
than normal. Um,
Yeah. And definitely, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rogue Ranger Radio. So we want to thank you for making Rogue Ranger Radio part of your day. Be sure to give us a like and a review on your favorite platform. It does mean a lot to us. And also spread the word about the podcast to people that you know. And lastly, don't forget to check the show notes like Jenna had mentioned. Now, go out and enjoy the best that California has to offer.